Do you have heroes? Any, growing up or even now? If you watch sports, perhaps you have heroes. And sporting heroes is big in Australia and around the world. And I've seen superstars like, Djokovic, Roger Federer, LeBron James, Michael Jordan. Wherever they go, they would have fans wanting to take picture with them, right? And perhaps you've seen those photos as well of young fan taking photo with their hero, their sporting hero. And then 10 years later, the old photo surfaced. Now this young fan has become a competitor. They share the same court as their superhero, even beating them. So you've seen that and you say like, wow, that young man, that young woman is so determined from very young age. I want to be like LeBron. I want to be like Roger Federer. And they pursue it in their life. They're so determined. They schedule their life, or perhaps their parents did that, schedule their life in such a way that they become good at what they set out to do. Now, they plan and design their life with precise schedule if they want to get there, right? You don't just leisurely live your life and then one day you realize, I'm just as good as LeBron James in basketball. It doesn't work that way. You cannot, 30 years old and first time went to Rebel Sports and get a racket, get the best tennis racket there is, and start hitting tennis ball and say, now I'm ready to challenge Djokovic, right? It doesn't work that way. They plan from very young age, right? So they schedule their day from very young age so that one day their hope is they can be like their heroes. Now, how about you? So those are those kids. They are so motivated. They're so focused. They say, one day, in 10 years' time, in 15 years' time, I'm going to be like that. How about you? Do you live like that? When you're young, like I'm looking around, there's none of you who's like 10 years old or 15 years old here. But when you were 10 years old, when you were 15 years old, did you like put up a poster of your hero in your bedroom? It's like, I'm going to be like that in 10 years' time. I know young people these days, they do that, perhaps not with sporting fans, but, with billionaires, perhaps. One day I'm going to be like Bill Gates. Maybe it's too old now. Like Elon Musk these days. Bill Gates is more my generation. How about you? Do you have someone like that? Do you have a hero growing up? And how did your life turn up if you have a hero? Is your life come close to your ambition that you dreamt about when you were 10 years old and 15 years old? Or let me ask in another way. 10 years ago, so wherever you are now, 50, 60, 30, 40, whatever age you are, rewind your life back to 10 years ago. 10 years ago, did you picture yourself in 10 years' time, you're going to be like where you are today? I'm going to be in this city. I'm going to have this kind of job or not have a job. I'm going to have this kind of family or not have a family. How did it turn out? 10 years ago, and then fast forward today. Did it turn out as planned? Or if 10 years ago you say, my health is terrible. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to be better. Did it work out for you? If you're 30 years old, 40 years, 50 years, it doesn't matter. Did your 15-year-old self imagine your life going to be like today? Precisely like today. I believe not many people would have imagined that your life going to be like where you are today, right? Yes, there are those kids who take photo with LeBron James and now playing on the same court with LeBron James. And those who took pictures with Djokovic when they were young and now playing on the international tennis competition with Djokovic. But for most of us, that's just a dream, isn't it? Even whom we'll marry, if you're married today, perhaps when you're growing up, you didn't imagine you married that kind of person. Whether you marry better or worse, I don't know. But the truth is, not many of us know exactly whom we'll marry, or how many children you want to have, or what kind of children you want to raise, or what kind of car you'll be driving, or what job you'll be doing, or what career you'll have. For me, I grew up in a small city in Indonesia, and I certainly did not picture myself as a 45-year-old person who would move interstate with 3 kids to plant a church in an eastern suburb of Melbourne, and married with 3 kids. Even 15 years ago, I wouldn't picture myself where I am today. Now, why am I saying all these things? Because it has to do with plan, right? Because if you look back, how serious you are. Some of you are very serious about planning. Others are not so. You're just winging it, right? So on one hand, there are people, the kind of people who's like, you have your Google Calendar, and then you have your journal. You plan every single hour of your day, every day. But there are those who are just winging it, just like, pff. See, regardless of where you are, my point is this. If you're honest, if you look back 10 years, 20 years, your life today did not turn out as you planned exactly. There are variables in your life that happened in your life. Well, and also, I don't believe there's enough data that could support to say that the planners kind are more successful than the non-planner kind. Okay? I don't think there's enough data to suggest that. But I do believe, though, gut feeling, that some kind of planning helps. Imagine if you're getting married and you say, I'm just going to wing it. I'm not going to plan. It's not going to happen. That day will never come. It will never come. You got to plan. Yes, you got to. But when it comes to planning, oftentimes with our lives, we have this broad stroke of planning. Right? We have this broad stroke planning. Perhaps you plan, when I grow up, I'm going to be in this kind of industry, or I'm going to be living in this city or that country. But not precisely in that kind of house with 3 bedrooms and a pool in the eastern suburb of Melbourne, or whatever it is that you plan. It may be not that detailed in your plan. But the broad stroke, perhaps, you say, I want to live overseas. When I graduate, I want to take a 3 years sabbatical before I get on to full-time work, or whatever it is. You might have that and you can carry it out. Or perhaps, you say, I want to marry young, marry old, marry when I'm 30, or whatever it is. But not the details, you see. Like which schools you'll attend, or which schools you're going to send your kids to. If you have young children, do you plan where you want to send your kids to? Perhaps, if you research the schools around your home, school zone. Now, once in school, though, do you plan? Once you go into school, uni, do you plan the kind of friends you want to have? Do you have a list? Do you plan like, I'm going to only have Asian friends? Definitely. From Southeast Asian, and only male or only female, only about 170 or taller or shorter, so that you don't feel like, you're short, so you have shorter friends. I don't know. Perhaps we don't plan to such details, right? And in those departments, we would wing it, wouldn't we? We just go to uni, we go to school, we see what kind of friends they have to offer in that school, right? And then we'll wing it and see which friends actually, share the same interests, that could actually have decent conversation with us. And those we don't plan. We just, quote unquote, winging it and see how it turns out. You don't go to school, you don't go to work, say, I'm going to make friends and be best friend with these kind of colleagues. And then if that colleague doesn't match your criteria, you say, no, I don't even want to talk to you. We don't do that, do we? So, now, all I'm trying to say and get to is this, that we do plan, but most of us, we plan in a broad stroke, right? And then a lot of our plans, or whatever we aspire to do, right? If we're honest and we look back 10 years, 5 years, 20 years, and look at our life today, how much of our plan that actually happened, it's another thing, right? So planning and actual outcomes are two different things. So that's my point. Perhaps I could have get there quicker, but sorry, I couldn't. By this point of the book of Joshua is this, that all the tribes have their land, and then Joshua is now setting a new place called cities of refuge. 6 places, 3 in the east and 3 on the west, right? So they are separated by Jordan River. So Joshua set up 3 cities each. It's about planning. It's about planning. So we're going to look at plan. Firstly, our plan, and secondly, God's plan. Okay? So that's all there is, really. Your plan and God's plan. Now, our plan. Our plan is for one thing, really. Whether you like it or not, you may not agree with me, but I hope by the end of my presentation on first point, you would agree that our plan often, if not always, is for our happiness. Our plan is for happiness. We don't plan for our demise, for pain. We plan for happiness. Even though if you plan, I'm going to go to gym 7 days a week, which is going to result in very painful muscles, the goal is happiness. So that you become healthier, you got 6-pack to show off in the summer, whatever it is. The goal is happiness, right? So our plan is for happiness. But have you ever thought, whatever plan that you have right now in your life, what is it, varies. All of us have in a various level of life, stage of life, and we have different kind of plan. Some of us plan differently. But have you ever thought about the reason why you do what you do today? The reason you do what you do today. Have you thought about the reason you plan your life the way it is? You see, you have an idea what happiness is, right? You have a kind of, some of you have precise idea what you want, but most of us, we have a general broad idea of what we want in life. And that is happiness. And that happiness comes in different form for us. And whatever that form is, our goal, our plan is to get that happiness in our life. So for some of us, we see relationship and families top on our list. And then we make it our goal to get there. To have a good family, to have a good children, whatever it is, to find a good spouse in our life. Because that's our goal. For us, that's the idea of happiness for us. And we plan our life to get there. Some of us wealthy to be wealthy, especially if you grow up in a household that don't have much. You say, now I don't want to live like this. When I grow up, I want to be wealthy. I want to have a lot of money. So you plan your life in such a way that, I want to get there. That's your happiness. That's your happiness. Some perhaps in fame, in power. You want to become a person of influence. So we may not realize it, but each of us have a version of happiness that drives our life. We dedicate our life in pursuit of that happiness, which is what I would say our safe place. When we get there, we feel safe. It's our version of city of refuge. Our family, our home. See, home is security for us. Family is security for us. They give us a sense of control. That the world may be out of control, but at least when I get home, everything is in order, my way. The utensils are here, the pots are here. The bedroom is clean. That gives us happiness, you see. So we plan and we pursue that happiness because we believe If we don't plan our life and find that happiness, that safe place, then no one else would do that for us. True? We plan our life in such a way and drive our lives towards that happiness because deep down we believe if it is not me, then who else? Because you believe no one else cares about you more than you care about yourself. True? That's why we're so worried about getting there, our safe place, our city of refuge, our happiness. See, the world is telling us today that you got to love yourself, right? It's a good thing, but I think it's overdone. Because the world not only tell us that you got to love yourself, but there's this subtext that the world is telling us as well. Because the world is telling us as well, you got to love yourself because if you don't, no one else would. We got to challenge that because I honestly believe that is not true. That is not true. See, there's no one who loves you, cares for you. That's what the world telling us today. You got to do it for yourself because no one else would. You got to be looking out for yourself because no one else would. Because no one else can look out for yourself and love you and care for you more than yourself. Now, if you're a Christian, you know that's not true. If you read the Bible, you know that's not true. But that's the lie of the world that try to tell us you got to love yourself. You got to do it for yourself because no one else would do it for you. And you give, therefore, when you buy into that belief, you give that task, that responsibility, and you burden yourself, you burden your life with it. Without realizing it. All the while without realizing it. You think you're just doing life. You just work hard. You just try to achieve from one thing to another in your life. But you are getting there. You are going to pursue that happy place that you always dream about. You may not write it down or put it up, make a big poster and put it on your wall in your bedroom, but you put it in the wall of your heart. And you've been seeking that all your life. Because you buy into the lie that the world is telling you, if you don't, then no one else would. Do you know how dangerous that thinking is? To believe that you are the master of your own life, of your own destiny. It's a very dangerous thing. It is a very dangerous thing. It is dangerous because that was exactly what happened to the first men and women in the Garden of Eden. Because they believe from the beginning of creation, they believe this Adam and Eve, the first men and women, they believe, they fell for it. They fell for that lie. They desire to be their own God. They believe that they're the master of their own destiny. That's the very premise that the Bible challenged. That is not true. It's a lie. So they desire from very beginning to chase that dream, to be the God of their own destiny, to be the master of their own life. Now we plan, therefore, and we work hard, therefore, to carry out that plan. All our life we seek that because we hate the idea of someone else telling us what to do. We want us to do what we want to do. We want to pursue that. We want to believe that that's what we want. We believe that if we, who love ourselves the most, because we believe that lie, that no one else will love us more than we love ourselves or care for us more than we care for ourselves. Now, when we believe that we love ourselves the most, know ourselves the most, if we don't do it, then no one else will. That's devastating. That's a devastating way to live your life. Because from the history of humanity, if you are a student of history, you know, human being as God does not work. You as God in your own life does not work. Imagine you get to carry out exactly and get everything that you want, that you plan for your life. From day one of your life, you won't be here today. You'll be dead. If you get everything that you ask for and want in your life, and you get that, you won't be here today. The reason that some of us are here alive today, get the education get to be able to play the instruments that we play because there are people in our lives that believes in us more than we believe in ourselves. There's some of us who play instruments well today, but if it's not for our parents who push us and force us, we won't be playing any instruments. No kids, well, maybe a small percentage of children would grow up and say, I want to practice every day. I want to study every day. Or I want to eat healthy food every day. Tell my teenage kids, right? I got 2 at home, to eat healthy foods, It's me who's going to make them to eat healthy foods and want to eat healthy foods. If they just eat what they want, if I say, you plan your meals from breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you can eat whatever you want to eat, they won't live long. Let me tell you that. They won't live long at all. They'll become very sickly. Because we, as gods, does not work. It just doesn't work. Proverbs 16:9 says this, the heart of man plans his way, but the Lord establishes his steps. Both are true. If you are a Christian, both statements are true. The statement that comes before the word but and the statement that comes after the word but, both are true. Christianity believes that while your action matters, your plan matters, God is ultimately in control. That's why you are alive and well in a way that you are today, because God is in control. Yes, you plan your life, but God is ultimately in control. God uses His creation through you, through your action, to carry out His plan. Now, this is important because this view of plan is neither fatalistic or deterministic. Let me explain what that means. Well, it's not that what you do, what you plan does not matter. Christianity doesn't believe that. Christianity doesn't believe that what you do, what you plan does not matter. That everything is all fate. That all you do does not matter. It's all fate anyway. Because if you believe that, then you'll be passive. You'll just sit around and do nothing, right? You say, if God plans for me to be a doctor one day, I'm just going to play video games from year 6 to when I'm 30 years old. And boom, suddenly I'm going to become a millionaire, successful doctor, a surgeon, because God planned my life that way. So I'm just going to play video games and eat junk food every day. It doesn't work that way, you see. Because what you do matters. Because if you believe in that lie, then you basically said, then what's the point of trying? What's the point of doing anything? But on the other hand also, it is not that what you do will determine the future precisely, deterministically. Because if you believe that, then you believe what you do is ultimately in control rather than God. Now, the danger of that is that if that's true, imagine the burden that you have in your life. That what you do, every decision that you do, will affect not only your life, but the lives of those who love you. Now, if you have kids, like me, teens, I've got 3 kids and 1 young 7-year-old girl. If I believe this, that everything that I do will determine their future ultimately, man, the burden that I put in myself, do you know that parenting doesn't come with a manual that say this is what you do, insert battery, and when they talk back to you, you say, and then the manual say, try this, and then it doesn't work, try number 2. It doesn't come with manual. You got to learn as you go. I remember the first time I have to confront my eldest, I have to take him to the park and talk to him, just like as a grown-up, father to son. I was just as scared as him. He was scared when I said, I need to talk to you. Let's go out and I want to have a conversation with you. He was scared, and I didn't tell him that, but I was just as scared. I was like, what am I going to say? how am I going to do this? Should I just go hard or should I go soft? Imagine if everything that I do, everything that I say will determine the outcome of his life, the burden that I put in my life. It's good if he turned out well in his life, but how about when he doesn't? Do I just say then, well, because I stuff up as a parent? See, Christianity doesn't believe that. Because when you look at your life today, if you are honest, for many of us, we shouldn't be where we are today, the way we are today, if all our action determined our future. For many of us, we've done stupid things. I don't know. Maybe I did. Maybe not you. Done so many stupid, dumb decisions in my life that if that is true, then I wouldn't be here today. So you'll be paralyzed, in other words. You'll be paralyzed with decision making because should I eat this? Will this kill me in 10 years' time if I eat this? Should I even drive this car? Should I fill up with 95 unleaded or 91? Every single decision will paralyze you if what you do is ultimately determining your life and your future. You'll be paralyzed with decision making. How can you do anything at all in life? You go to restaurants, you ask still water or sparkling. It's like, ooh. And they say, we got 3 brands here. Which one do you want? You're just paralyzed because every decision matters, you see, right? Because you could potentially screw up your life for good because you choose still water that has been contaminated. I don't know, right? But not only your life. Because you screw up your life, you screw up your spouse's life and your children's life. Can you imagine that kind of life? This is why I love the God of the Bible. He is sovereign, He's in control, yet He works all things out through our actions, through our decision making. He works His plan through our action, not in spite of our action. So that's our plan for happiness, right? Second thing, God's plan is not for our happiness, but for His holiness. So when you read the Bible, you will see that God is more concerned about you than you about you. Let me say that again. If you read the Bible, you will start to see that God is concerned and cares about you more than you about you. Because that's the lie of the world that tells us if you don't love yourself, no one else would. If you don't care about yourself, no one else would. Because you is the best person to love and care for yourself. That is not true. Tell young kids, I've got children, they don't love themselves more than I love them. No way. They think when they eat junk food for 7 days straight and play games for 24 hours a day, it's love. That's what they think. Some, my teenage kids thinks that's love. When dad prevent them from playing games for more than 3 hours a day, that's not love. But that's love, you see. So when you read the Bible, you start beginning to see that God loves you more than you could love yourself. So now, back to Joshua. This is strange. I quickly read through this last week because I know I'm going to talk about this week. Is that when Joshua distributed the lands, do you know how he did it? He cast lots. He tossed coin. He threw the dice, basically. Let's look at that. Joshua 18:6. And you shall describe the land in 7 divisions and bring the description here to me. And Joshua said, and I will cast lots, I will throw the dice for you here before the Lord our God. So which land you're going to get? Well, let's see. Did it happen that way? Is it by random chance? Throwing dice, casting lots? No. God is in control, you see. But he still have to throw it. You have to cast the lots. Now, and let me explain again. In Proverbs 16:33 says this. The lot is cast into the lap, but its every decision is from the Lord. Do you see that? Do you see that balance of human action and God who is sovereign and in control? How about the evil things you say? Now, that happen. We've seen war, news of war that is happening, violence that is happening. How about that? Is it also part of God's plan? That one nation decided to kidnap the people of another nation and that nation decided to then start bombarding the other nation? Is evil part of God's plan then? The short answer is yes, but I want to explain. Amos 3 verse 6, the prophet Amos. It says this, is a trumpet blown in the city and the people are not afraid? Does disaster come to a city unless the Lord has done it? The implication of this is no. Whether good or bad, that happens in the city because God has done it. So all the evil that you see, is it part of God's plan? The short answer is yes. Now here in Australia, we would often see dead animals on the street, right? More so in Tasmania perhaps than in Melbourne, but still. I live in the further eastern suburb of Melbourne. There's a lot of dead birds on the street, possums, crow, magpie, you name it. The dead animals on the street, run over by cars. Now, tragic, yes, but is it part of God's plan? Did God plan for that bird to fly and then get hit by a truck or by a car? Or by you? Did God plan that? The answer is yes. And this is one of the tragic, sad verse that not many of us Christians think it is a tragic and sad verse. We think this is a happy verse. Let's read this. See if you believe me or not. Agree with me or not. Matthew 10 verse 29. Are not two sparrows sold for a penny? And not one of them will fall to the ground apart from your Father. See, most Christians read this. Isn't it beautiful that God loves me? To the point that God says, not even one of the sparrow fall to the ground apart from God knowing. How about me, God's most precious creation? But this verse is basically saying that it's part of God's plan that a sparrow fall to the ground and die. It is part of God's plan when a magpie flew and then across the street get hit by the truck and then crushed by the next car. It's part of God's plan. God saw it. God let it happen. That's what the Bible says. That's God's plan. Now, the famous story of Joseph in Genesis, Joseph was sold into slavery by his own brothers. At the end of his time, by the end of the story, close to the end of the story, Joseph met his brothers. But now Joseph is no longer a slave, but the prime minister who holds his brother's life in his hand, who could just put his brothers in prison, kill them. He could do that. These brothers who sold him into slavery. But you know what he said when he had that position of power? You know what Joseph said to his brother? He said this in Genesis 50:20. As for you, brothers, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, to bring it about that many people should be kept alive as they are today. He said, yes, you plan evil, but God has a different plan to use that evil. Did Joseph sold into slavery? Yes. Was he imprisoned? Yes, he was. But God used that for saving many lives, according to Joseph. So in other words, God doesn't let evil that happen have the final say. In the world, in your life, in the lives of someone you love. God does not let evil have the final say. He furthered his plan from evil. For all the evil that happens, God furthered his plan. And the famous Romans 8:28 that everyone must memorize. All my 3 kids, I make sure they memorize this. And all 3 kids memorize this. If you don't believe me, you can go out here after this and ask my 7-year-old girl, Romans 8:28, and ask her to recite it for you. It says, and we know that for those who love God, all things work together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. Now, I know you don't know Greek, but hey, you got a pastor who went to Bible college who learned Greek, and I studied the word all things. I study that hard. I look into the dictionary. I study the grammar. I study everything. All things work together. You know what it means in original Greek? That word, all things, that been translated as all things in English. You know what it means originally? It means all things. Everything. Including evil. Including your terrible plan. Including your terrible decision making, including the fact that you asked for sparkling instead of still water in a restaurant. Despite all the dumb decisions in your life, God worked all together for good for those who are called according to his purpose. That's God's plan, you see. Now, Joshua set up 6 cities. I said in 3 in the east, 3 in the west, beyond, in the east beyond Jordan. Now, let's look at these cities of refuge. What is it and was it for in its context? Now, these cities are designed by God. It wasn't designed by Moses nor Joshua. God designed in such a way that if somebody kill another person without intent to kill, I think the scripture even say, if the person did not hate that person, right? Hate is a very, very serious word, okay? It's just as good as killing that person. So the Bible says if somebody killed unintentionally without prior hate, that person could run and take refuge in this one of these 6 cities of refuge. So I'm going to read again the first 5 verses from Joshua 20. Then the Lord said to Joshua, so the people of Israel appoint the cities of refuge of which I spoke to you through Moses, that the manslayer who strikes any person without intent or unknowingly may flee there. They shall be for you a refuge from the avenger of blood. He shall flee to one of these cities and shall stand at the entrance of the gate of the city, explain his case to the elders of that city. Then they shall take him into the city and give him a place. And he shall remain with them. And if the avenger of blood pursues him, they shall not give up the manslayer into his hand, because he struck his neighbor unknowingly and did not hate him in the past. That's the purpose of these 6 cities of refuge. And that is God's plan. That's God's provision, you see. Perhaps you have questioned yourself in your life, in all the decisions that you make in your life, that perhaps even paralyze you, make you second guess whether you've done or made the right decision in your life. And you ask, what if I messed up? What if I made the wrong decision to take that job, to marry that person, to go to that school? Whatever it is, you ask yourself, what if I messed up? What if I got it wrong? This is what the cities of refuge are for people who messed up. City of refuge teaches us that God has a plan for messed up people. For messed up people. His redemptive plan in history isn't an afterthought. God did not from his throne in heaven and say, oops, what have they done now? Let me come down and fix this up for them. No. It's not an afterthought. God planned from the beginning. So the Bible describes what happened when a person killed another person unintentionally back in Exodus to Moses. to very beginning. God already has His grand plan. But God's plan, actually, if you read earlier on, not in Joshua, God plans for more cities. But because of the Israelite disobedience, they didn't have enough territory to have more than 6 cities. And in Exodus, for example, verse 21, it says this. The Bible describes what happened when a person killed another unintentionally. But if he did not lie in wait for him, that means if this person killed, not planned, right? He did not lie in wait for him, planning to kill that person. Instead, that God let him fall into his hand, then I will appoint for you a place to which he may flee, that city of refuge. Do you understand this verse? Do you see that God says, if that person, the murderer, did not do it with intention to kill, instead, what happened is God let him fall into his hand. God made it happen. God, in such a way that God made the murder happen. That's what the Bible says. Even in your worst oops of your life, the worst decision that you made, the worst dumb decision that you ever made, even that wasn't random. In this case, God says if the person killed, even that, if he did not plan for it, God let that person slip into his hand. God made it happen. Now, if you look at all the things that happened just last week or last month, for example, not only some of them happened because of God, you see. So think about what happened in your life these past weeks, past months, or past year. Not only some of them happened because of God, but everything, all things that happened, the good decision, the bad decision, the worst decision, happened because of God. Now, if you live long enough, you'll realize when it comes to messing up one's life, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. When it comes to making stupid decisions in life, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. But God says, God of the Bible says, He works through that. All things work together for good for those who are called according to His purpose. Now, those who seek protection, in Israel's time, in those days, they get protection in the city of refuge. They get a fair trial in the city of refuge, and they will need, if you read what I've just read in verse 1 to 5, they need to remain there. They need to remain in that city until when? Until the death of the high priest of that city. That's interesting, isn't it? Not until the death of the avenger, not until the death of the murderer, but until the death of the high priest. He says, as soon as the high priest of that city died, this manslayer can go out free. And no one should touch him or her. Joshua 20 verse 6 says this, He shall remain in that city until he has stood before the congregation for judgment, until the death of him who is high priest at that time. Then the manslayer may return to his own town and his own home, and the town from which he fled. Now, this is the only way the offender could leave the city safely. There's no other way. When the high priest died. Now, Christian, the temptation is for us, for you and me, from very young, is to run to our own version of happiness, or plan, or goal, or ideals. This temptation is that's even for Christians. If Bible-believing, church-going Christians, that is the temptation that we face every day. To run into our city of refuge, our version of happiness, whatever we deem to what we need and what will make us happy. That's what we run to. That's our temptation. Our own city of refuge, our family, our job, whatever it is. Do you think, honestly, that no one could love you and care about you more than you? Because that's the only way you should pursue that kind of mindset, that I should chase after my own version of happiness or own version of city of refuge. The only valid reason that you would do that is because you believe and it is true and that no one else care and love you more than you love and care about yourself. If you think that, then you're wrong. That no one else care and love you or have the capacity to care and love you more than you do. The Bible tells us that Jesus is a high priest. If you go to the New Testament, Jesus is a high priest who died for us so that we could live. Now, the high priest in this city of refuge only protect those who kill, who make mistake unintentionally. But our high priest, Jesus, cover our sin, whether our sin is made unintentionally or intentionally. Whether we screw up on purpose or not on purpose. So don't run into your own version of city of refuge, your own version of happiness. Instead, run to Jesus, our city of refuge, our eternal city of refuge, who will never fail us. Because no one in this world could care for you and love you like Jesus. You think your parents, your spouse, your children could love you like no one else could. But perhaps that's because they don't know who you are, the real you. Someone once said, even our spouse, if our spouse knows our every thought, our spouse wouldn't love us. Our spouse would leave us. But do you know who knows every single thoughts in your life, every stuff up in your life, even if it's still in your heart, you have not carried it out? Jesus knows that, and yet he still loves you. Because for someone to love you, if they don't know every single thought in your life, do not know the real you, it make you feel good about it because someone loves you, but you know that's a fake, that's superficial, right? Because that person loves you because they don't know the real you, the 100% you when no one is looking. But Jesus is the one who knows you more than you know yourself and still loves you. Loves you enough to die for you on the cross. So my message is this. God has a plan. Don't run to your own plan. Run to Jesus. Let us pray.